The scent of cinnamon and regret hung heavy in the air as James kneaded dough at 4 a.m., his hands trembling with the weight of secrets he'd never dared to speak. In the dim glow of his bakery's kitchen, the world felt small, safe, until the morning an old veteran's words would unravel everything he thought he knew about love, family, and himself. By sunrise, James's life would never be the same. James Whitaker, 28, had built his life around routine in the sleepy town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. Every morning, he baked trays of muffins, scones, and cookies for the veterans at Willow Creek Nursing Home. It wasn't just charity, it was penance. His grandfather, a war hero turned recluse, had died in that same nursing home a decade ago, leaving behind a legacy of silence and shame that James carried like a stone in his chest. Baking was his way of making amends. For what? He wasn't entirely sure. The nursing home's residents adored him. They'd shuffle into the common room, eyes lighting up at the sight of his wicker baskets filled with warm pastries. James knew their names, their stories: Vietnam, Korea, Desert Storm. He listened to their war tales, their gruff laughter, their complaints about creaky joints. But he never spoke of himself, not his dreams, not his heart, and certainly not the way his pulse raced when he saw Eli Carter, the new physical therapist who'd arrived at the nursing home 3 months ago. Eli was everything James wasn't: open, confident, unapologetically himself. With tousled blonde hair and a smile that could thaw a winter storm, Eli moved through the world like he belonged in it. He was 27, a transplant from Philadelphia, and openly gay in a town where whispers still carried judgment. James, with his guarded hazel eyes and calloused baker's hands, watched Eli from a distance, torn between longing and fear. In Willow Creek, love between two men wasn't just frowned upon. It was a risk. One crisp October morning, James arrived at the nursing home with his usual delivery. The air smelled of fallen leaves and coffee as he set out blueberry muffins and oatmeal cookies. Eli was there, helping Mr. Thompson, a gruff 82-year-old Korean War vet, with his stretches. "Morning, James," Eli called, his voice warm, teasing. "You ever gonna make me those lavender scones I keep begging for?" James's cheeks flushed. "Maybe if you say pretty please first," he shot back, surprising himself with the flirtation. The room chuckled, but Mr. Thompson's sharp eyes lingered on James, a flicker of something unreadable in them. As James poured coffee, Mr. Thompson beckoned him closer. His voice was low, gravelly. "Son, I knew your grandfather once. Thomas Whitaker. We served together in '52. James froze, the coffee pot trembling in his hand. No one spoke of his grandfather. Not here. Not ever. He was a good man, Thompson continued, his gaze piercing. But he carried a secret, one I reckon you might understand. James's heart thudded. His grandfather's secret? The man had been a ghost in James's life, distant, haunted, locked away in his own mind after the war. James had grown up hearing whispers of Thomas's bravery, but also his isolation, his refusal to connect with his own son, James's father. What secret could Thompson mean? And why did it feel like the old man was looking straight through him? That night, James couldn't sleep. He tossed in his small apartment above the bakery, Thompson's words looping in his mind. He thought of Eli, his easy laugh, the way his hand had brushed James's when he'd handed him a muffin earlier. James wanted to run to him, to confess the ache in his chest, but fear held him back. In Willow Creek, being himself could cost him everything: his bakery, his community, his fragile sense of belonging. The next morning, James baked with a frenzy, pouring his confusion into batches of bread and pastries. When he arrived at the nursing home, Eli was waiting outside, leaning against the brick wall, his breath visible in the chilly air. "You okay?" Eli asked, his blue eyes searching. "You looked spooked yesterday." James hesitated, then blurted, "Thompson said he knew my grandfather. Said he had a secret." The words felt like a betrayal, but Eli's steady gaze grounded him. "I don't know what he meant, but it's messing with me." Eli stepped closer, his voice soft. "Maybe it's time you asked Thompson. And maybe," he paused, a shy smile breaking through, "maybe you could talk to me, too, about whatever's got you so scared." James's breath caught. He wanted to tell Eli everything. How he'd spent years hiding who he was, how he'd fallen for Eli's kindness, his courage. But before he could speak, a shout came from inside. "Fire!" someone yelled. Smoke was curling from the nursing home's kitchen. Without thinking, James and Eli rushed inside. The residents were shuffling out, coughing, as staff guided them to safety. James grabbed a fire extinguisher, his baker's instincts kicking in, and followed Eli to the source, a grease fire blazing on the stove. Together, they doused it, their movements synchronized, adrenaline pumping. When the flames were out, Eli grabbed James's arm, his grip firm. "You're braver than you think," he said, his voice hoarse from smoke. James's heart raced, not just from the fire. In that moment, with Eli's hand on him and the veteran safe outside, he felt something shift. Maybe he could be brave, not just for others, but for himself. But Thompson's words still haunted him. What secret had his grandfather carried? And how could it possibly connect to the longing James felt for Eli? As they stepped outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the chaos. James looked at Eli, his chest tight with possibility. He didn't know what Thompson's revelation would bring, but for the first time, he wanted to find out. The nursing home's lawn buzzed with controlled chaos as firefighters checked the building and residents huddled under blankets, their faces etched with shock. James stood beside Eli, his hands still trembling from the extinguisher's weight, his mind a storm of Thompson's cryptic words and the electric warmth of Eli's touch. He'd spent years building walls around his heart, but today they were cracking. Eli nudged him, his voice low. "You were a hero back there, James. Don't think I didn't notice." His smile was gentle, but his eyes held a challenge, daring James to step out of his shell. James wanted to respond, to say something bold, but fear clawed at him. Instead, he muttered, "Just did what needed doing." Inside, the nursing home was cleared for re-entry, the fire contained to the kitchen. As residents shuffled back, James caught sight of Mr. Thompson sitting alone on a bench, his weathered hands folded over his cane. The old man's gaze met James's, heavy with unspoken truths. James's stomach twisted. He needed answers. "Stay here," he told Eli, his voice steadier than he felt. He approached Thompson, kneeling beside him. "Sir, what you said yesterday about my grandfather. What did you mean?" Thompson's eyes, cloudy with age, sharpened. "Thomas Whitaker was my friend. Cordell, utvenkettu. We were kids, barely 20, scared out of our minds." He paused, his voice dropping. He loved someone he couldn't talk about. Someone the world wouldn't let him love. It broke him. James's breath hitched. "Oh," he whispered, though part of him already knew. "A soldier. David. They were close. Too close for the Army's liking. They got caught. And David, he didn't make it home." Thompson's voice cracked. Thomas never forgave himself. Carried that guilt till the day he died. The world tilted. James's grandfather, the stoic war hero, had loved a man? The silence, the distance, the shame, it all made sense now. James's own fears mirrored his grandfather's, a legacy of hiding who he was. He glanced back at Eli, who was helping a resident adjust her blanket, and his chest ached with longing and terror. That evening, James invited Eli to the bakery after hours. The air smelled of sugar and yeast, a sanctuary of flour-dusted counters and warm ovens. Eli leaned against the counter, his sleeves rolled up, watching James shape dough. "So what did Thompson tell you?" he asked, his tone careful. James hesitated, then let it spill. Thompson's story, his grandfather's hidden love, the weight of it all. Eli listened, his face softening. When James finished, Eli stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. "Your grandfather didn't get to live his truth. But you can, James. You don't have to hide." The words hit like a punch. James's hands stilled on the dough, his heart pounding. "It's not that simple," he said, his voice raw. "This town, my family, they turn their backs on me." Eli's hand brushed James's, tentative but warm. "Not everyone. Not me." The air between them crackled, and for a moment, James let himself imagine a world where he could reach out, pull Eli close, and not care who saw. But the next day, reality crashed in. Word of the fire had spread, and with it, rumors. A local gossip blog posted about the baker and the therapist being too close during the chaos. By noon, James's phone buzzed with texts from his father, a stern man who'd inherited his own father's silence. "People are talking, James. Don't embarrass us." Panic gripped him. He avoided Eli at the nursing home, delivering his pastries and leaving quickly. But Eli found him that evening, waiting outside the bakery, his face a mix of hurt and determination. "You're shutting me out," Eli said. "Why?" James's voice broke. "Because I'm scared, Eli. I'm not like you. I can't just be myself." Eli stepped closer, his eyes fierce. "You think I'm not scared? I've lost friends, family, jobs. But I'd rather lose everything than live a lie." He reached for James's hand, but James pulled back, his heart tearing. That night, alone in his apartment, James found a shoebox in his closet, his grandfather's old belongings, passed down after his death. Inside were letters, yellowed and fragile, addressed to D. The words were raw, desperate, filled with love Thomas could never speak aloud. One line burned into James's soul. "I'd give anything to hold you in the open, just once." Tears stung James's eyes. His grandfather had lived a half-life, suffocated by fear. James didn't want that. But as he looked out his window at the quiet town, He wondered if he had the courage to choose differently. James's hands shook as he folded his grandfather's letters, each word a mirror to his own unspoken desires. The bakery, once his refuge, felt like a cage, its walls closing in with the weight of Willow Creek's judgment. He hadn't spoken to Eli in 2 days, but the memory of his touch lingered like a bruise. The nursing home was quieter now, the fire's aftermath fading, but the gossip hadn't. James felt eyes on him as he delivered his pastries, residents whispering, staff glancing. He avoided Mr. Thompson, afraid of more truths he wasn't ready to face. But Eli was there, helping a veteran with a walker, his smile strained but kind. James's heart twisted. He missed Eli's warmth, his courage, but fear kept him silent. That afternoon, a confrontation loomed. James's father, Robert, stormed into the bakery, his face red with anger. "You're throwing away everything we've built," he spat. "This family's name means something in this town. You think you can flaunt whatever this is with that therapist and not pay a price?" James gripped the counter, his voice low. "I'm not flaunting anything, Dad. I'm just trying to live." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Your grandfather tried that. Look where it got him. Alone, broken, a disgrace. You want that life." The words cut deep, but they also sparked something in James. "Maybe he was alone because you shut him out," he said, his voice trembling with defiance. Robert froze, then turned and left without another word. The silence was deafening. That evening, James sought out Mr. Thompson. The old man was in his room, staring at a faded photo of soldiers in fatigues. "Tell me more," James said, his voice urgent. "About my grandfather. About David." Thompson sighed, his hands trembling. David was bright, brave. He and Thomas were inseparable. But the army caught them one night, and David was discharged, humiliated. He took his own life a year later. Thomas never recovered. He shut everyone out, his wife, his son. "You." James's chest tightened. His grandfather's pain wasn't just a story. It was a warning, a plea. He thanked Thompson and left, his mind racing. Outside, Eli was waiting, his face etched with worry. "You can't keep running, James," he said. "Talk to me." James's voice broke. "I read his letters. My grandfather loved someone he couldn't have, and it destroyed him. I don't want that to be me, Eli, but I'm terrified." Eli's eyes softened. He stepped closer, his hand grazing James's cheek. "You're not him. You have a choice. And I'm here, James. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, James didn't pull away. He let Eli's touch ground him, let the warmth of it seep into his bones. They stood there, under the nursing home's oak tree, the world fading around them. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was a promise, a fragile, beautiful thing. But the next day, the town's judgment tightened its grip. A group of locals, led by a pastor from the church James's family attended, confronted him at the bakery. "We don't want your kind here," the pastor said, his voice cold. "Think about the veterans. They deserve better." James's blood boiled. "I bake for them every day," he said, his voice steady despite the fear. "I've never disrespected them. Can you say the same about me?" The crowd dispersed, but the damage was done. By evening, the bakery's windows were egged, a cruel reminder of Willow Creek's limits. James sat among the mess, head in his hands, when Eli appeared. Without a word, he grabbed a sponge and started cleaning. They worked in silence, side by side, until the windows gleamed. "You don't have to do this," James said, his voice thick. Eli smiled, tired but resolute. "I want to, because I care about you, James. And I think you care about me, too." James's heart swelled. He reached for Eli's hand, their fingers intertwining. It was small, but it was a start, a rebellion against fear, against his grandfather's ghosts. The bakery's windows sparkled under the morning sun, but the town's hostility lingered like a stain. James woke with Eli's hand still in his, a quiet anchor in the storm. For the first time, he felt a flicker of courage, not enough to drown the fear, but enough to keep going. He baked with renewed purpose, pouring his heart into lavender scones, Eli's favorite. When he arrived at the nursing home, the veterans greeted him warmly, oblivious to the town's whispers. Mr. Thompson caught his eye, nodding slightly, as if he knew the battle James was fighting. "You're stronger than he was," Thompson said softly. "Don't let them break you." James's throat tightened. He found Eli in the therapy room, setting out the scones. "For you," he said, his voice shy. Eli's face lit up, and when their fingers brushed, James didn't flinch. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. But the town wasn't done with them. That afternoon, a petition circulated calling for a boycott of James's bakery. His father called, his voice cold. "You're choosing this over family," he said. "Fix it, or you're done." James's resolve wavered. He loved his bakery, his town, his roots. But he also loved Eli, the way he laughed, the way he stood tall despite the world's weight. That night, he invited Eli to his apartment. They sat on the couch, the shoebox of his grandfather's letters between them. "I want to be brave," James said, his voice raw, "but I'm scared of losing everything." Eli's hand found his, steady and warm. "You won't lose me," he said, "and you're not alone. The veterans, they see you. They know who you are." The next day, James made a decision. He baked his usual trays, but added something new. A small batch of cookies with rainbow sprinkles, a quiet declaration. At the nursing home, he set them out, his heart pounding. The veterans noticed, their reactions mixed. Some smiled, some looked away. But Mr. Thompson took a cookie, his eyes twinkling. "About time, son," he said. Eli stood beside him, pride in his gaze. When the room cleared, he pulled James into a corner and kissed him, soft, tentative, but real. James's world tilted, not with fear, but with hope. It was their first kiss, hidden but honest, a step toward freedom. But the backlash grew. The petition gained traction, and by week's end, the bakery's sales plummeted. James's father stopped by, his face a mask of disappointment. "You're throwing it all away," he said. "For what?" "For me," James said, his voice firm. "For who I am." His father left without a word, and James felt the weight of that loss. But Eli was there, helping him clean, plan, survive. They started a social media campaign, sharing photos of the veterans enjoying James's pastries, emphasizing his commitment to them. Slowly, support trickled in, not from Willow Creek, but from nearby towns, from strangers who saw their story online. One evening, as they closed the bakery, Eli turned to James. "We're building something real," he said. "Not just us, but a community. You're changing things, James." James looked at him, the man who'd become his courage, his home. "We're changing things," he corrected, and pulled Eli close, their foreheads touching under the bakery's dim lights. Spring arrived in Willow Creek, painting the town with hope James hadn't dared to feel in months. The bakery, though battered, stood strong, its shelves lined with pastries and a new sense of purpose. James and Eli were a team now, their love no longer hidden, though still cautious in a town slow to change. The boycott had hurt, but the online campaign had saved them. People drove from Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, even Philadelphia to buy James's scones, drawn by the story of a baker who wouldn't back down. The veterans rallied, too. Mr. Thompson organized a pastry day at the nursing home, where residents shared stories of James's kindness, their voices drowning out the town's judgment. One morning, James found a letter slipped under the bakery's door. It was from his father, the first contact in months. "I don't understand you," it read, "but I see your grandfather in you, his stubborn heart. I'm trying." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. James tucked it into the shoebox with his grandfather's letters, a bridge between past and present. That afternoon, James and Eli hosted a small event at the nursing home, a celebration of the veterans and their stories. James baked a massive cake, its icing adorned with stars for every war the residents had served in. Eli stood beside him, their shoulders brushing, a quiet defiance in their closeness. Mr. Thompson raised a glass of lemonade, his voice strong. "To James," he said, "who bakes more than bread. He bakes hope." The room erupted in applause, and James felt tears prick his eyes. He looked at Eli, whose smile said everything. "You did this. We did this." Later, under the same oak tree where they'd shared their first moment, James took Eli's hand. "I spent my life afraid," he said, his voice steady. "But you showed me how to be free. I love you, Eli." Eli's eyes shone. "I love you too," he said, and they kissed, not caring who saw. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. Instead, a veteran nearby clapped. Then another, their cheers a small revolution. James's grandfather had lived in shadows, his love a secret that destroyed him. But James chose differently. He baked every morning, not just for the veterans, but for himself, for Eli, for the life they were building. The town was changing, slowly, because of him, because love, like bread, could rise if given time and warmth. As they walked back to the bakery, hand in hand, James felt his grandfather's weight lift. He wasn't just Thomas Whitaker's grandson anymore. He was James, baker, lover, survivor. And for the first time, that was enough.